Train to Busan unfolds as a gripping survival story that combines relentless tension with deep emotional resonance, set against the confined and fast-moving backdrop of a high-speed train. The film takes a familiar horror concept and transforms it into something urgent and human, using the zombie outbreak not just as a source of fear, but as a mirror reflecting selfishness, sacrifice, and compassion. From the moment the journey begins, the story establishes a sense of inevitability, where ordinary routines are interrupted by a catastrophe that spreads faster than reason or control. At the center of the narrative is a work-focused father, who is emotionally distant from his young daughter. Their relationship feels strained, shaped by neglect and unspoken disappointment. The train trip begins as a simple attempt to make amends, a small gesture meant to bridge the growing gap between them. This emotional foundation grounds the story early on, ensuring that when chaos erupts, the stakes feel personal rather than abstract. The daughter's innocence and moral clarity contrast sharply with the father's initially self-centered mindset, setting the stage for a powerful character arc. As the train departs, subtle signs hint that something is wrong in the outside world. News reports play in the background, stations appear tense, and an air of unease hangs over the journey. The outbreak itself is sudden and shocking, erupting in close quarters where escape is limited and panic spreads as quickly as the infection. The confined space of the train amplifies every scream, every impact, and every desperate decision, turning each carriage into a battleground between survival and humanity. The cast of characters aboard the train represents a cross-section of society, each reacting differently to the crisis. There are everyday working people, young students full of energy and fear, a tough but kind-hearted man traveling with his pregnant wife, and figures whose authority or wealth give them a false sense of control. These characters are not just background survivors. They are integral to the story's exploration of how people behave when stripped of comfort and certainty. Some rise to the moment with courage and empathy, while others retreat into fear and selfishness. The zombies themselves are portrayed with terrifying intensity. Their movements are fast, erratic, and relentless, creating a constant sense of urgency. Unlike slow, shambling threats, these creatures overwhelm through speed and numbers, forcing characters to make split-second decisions. The infection spreads through bites and contact, making trust fragile and suspicion unavoidable. Every injury becomes a potential death sentence, heightening the emotional weight of even minor encounters. As the train hurtles forward, survival becomes a matter of strategy and cooperation. Characters learn to use their environment creatively, blocking doors, timing movements, and exploiting brief moments of safety. These sequences are carefully paced, blending action with suspense and allowing the audience to feel every narrow escape. The film avoids glorifying violence, instead focusing on the desperation and fear that drive people to fight back against overwhelming odds. The emotional core of the story deepens as relationships form and evolve under pressure. The father begins to witness acts of selflessness that challenge his worldview. The strong, outspoken man protecting his wife embodies a form of masculinity rooted in care rather than dominance. Young characters experience fear and loss too early, forced to grow up in moments. These interactions remind the viewer that survival is not just about staying alive, but about preserving one's humanity. Conflict among the survivors becomes as dangerous as the infected threat. Fear leads to division, and mistrust turns people against one another. Some characters believe that survival justifies cruelty, pushing others aside to protect themselves. This internal struggle highlights one of the film's most powerful themes, that monsters are not only created by infection, but by choices made under pressure. The train becomes a moving microcosm of society, revealing how quickly social order can fracture. The pacing of the film is relentless but controlled. Moments of high-intensity action are balanced with quieter scenes of reflection and grief. These pauses allow the emotional impact to settle, giving weight to losses and sacrifices. The film understands that constant chaos can dull fear, so it strategically uses silence, stillness, and anticipation to maintain tension. As the journey continues, the father's transformation becomes increasingly clear. His initial instinct to prioritize his own safety slowly gives way to a growing sense of responsibility toward others. He begins to see the world through his daughter's eyes, recognizing the importance of kindness even in the face of death. This evolution feels earned, shaped by observation, regret, and the influence of those who choose compassion despite the cost. The pregnant woman represents hope and continuity, a reminder that life persists even in the darkest circumstances. Her presence raises the emotional stakes, symbolizing a future that must be protected at all costs. The unborn child becomes a silent motivation for bravery, pushing characters to act not just for themselves, but for something greater than the present moment. The train's destinations become symbols of false hope and harsh reality. Each stop promises safety, only to reveal further devastation. This repetition reinforces the sense that there is no easy escape and that survival requires endurance rather than rescue. The outside world, glimpsed briefly through windows and stations, feels equally chaotic and broken, expanding the scope of the disaster beyond the train. As the story approaches its climax, sacrifices become unavoidable. Characters are forced to make impossible choices, weighing individual lives against collective survival. These moments are portrayed with restraint, allowing emotion to speak louder than spectacle. The film does not linger on heroism as triumph, but as loss, emphasizing that every act of bravery carries a cost. The final act delivers emotional devastation without manipulation. The father's journey reaches its conclusion in a way that underscores the film's central message about love, responsibility, and redemption. His actions reflect the lessons he has learned, proving that even in a world overrun by death, meaningful change is possible at the individual level. The bond between parent and child becomes the story's most powerful weapon against despair. The ending avoids offering easy comfort. Survival comes with trauma, memory, and grief. Yet there is also a quiet sense of hope, embodied by innocence and the persistence of empathy. The final moments suggest that humanity's greatest strength is not physical power, but the ability to care for one another even when fear demands the opposite. The release of the film was marked by a strong anticipation, with early glimpses emphasizing its intense action and emotional depth. Trailer moments focused on the speed of the outbreak, the claustrophobic setting, and the desperate fight for survival, hinting that this was more than a typical zombie story. The marketing suggested a blend of horror and heart, setting expectations for a film that would both thrill and move audiences. Over time, the film's reputation grew through word of mouth, with viewers praising its character-driven approach and emotional impact. Discussions often centered on its social themes, particularly how it portrays class, responsibility, and moral choice during crisis, rather than relying solely on fear. The film resonated because it reflected real human behavior under extreme pressure. Train to Busan stands out as a story that uses horror as a lens to examine what it means to be human. It asks difficult questions about who we choose to protect, how fear shapes our actions, and whether compassion can survive when survival itself is uncertain. The zombies are terrifying, but they are not the true focus. They are the catalyst that reveals character. By the time the journey ends, the audience is left not just with memories of intense sequences, but with an emotional imprint that lingers. The film proves that genre storytelling can be both entertaining and meaningful, delivering thrills while exploring profound emotional truths. It transforms a simple train ride into a powerful meditation on sacrifice, love, and the fragile bonds that hold people together. In the end, Train to Busan is remembered not only for its tension and horror, but for its heart. It shows that even in the face of unstoppable darkness, individual choices still matter. Through loss and courage, the story reminds viewers that humanity's greatest fight is not against monsters, but against the fear that turns us into them.